Good evening. You're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. Straight up to our top story. The expert committee probing the allegations of illegal surveillance using Pegasus spyware has found that 5 out of the 29 phones that were examined had malware. However, it's unclear whether the malware was Pegasus or not. Now, a bench headed by Chief Justice of India N.V. Ramana took note of the finding by the panel that the centre did not cooperate with the inquiry. Now, the Supreme Court has said that the inquiry panel's report is in three parts, including two reports by a technical committee and one report by the overseeing judge. The case will be heard again after 4 weeks. Now, this is what happened in July 2021. A global collaborative investigative project revealed that Pegasus may have been allegedly used to target mobile phones of individuals in several countries, including India. In India, the phones of ruling ministers, opposition, activists, businessmen, and journalists were allegedly targeted by the spyware. Now, in September, the court had appointed the expert committee to look into these allegations. The panel submitted an interim report in February. Now, on May 20th, the Supreme Court had granted more time to the committee to submit its final report and asked it to complete the examination of 29 mobile phones allegedly targeted by this spyware, preferably within 4 weeks. Also in the news, the Goa police has registered a murder case in connection with BJP leader Sonali Phogat's death. NDTV has reported that an autopsy has revealed that her body had multiple blunt force injuries. The post-mortem report has said, and I quote, "There are multiple blunt force injuries over the body. In view of the above, the manner for death is for the investigation officer to ascertain," end quote. Now, Sonali Phogat's personal assistant Sudhir Sangwan and his friend Sukhwinder Vasi, who were with her when she arrived in Goa on Monday, have been charged. Sonali Phogat was declared dead at the St. Anthony Hospital at Anjuna in North Goa on Tuesday morning. Her family questioned initial reports that she had died of a cardiac arrest. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court today directed the convicts in the Bilkis Banu case be made party in a plea challenging the Gujarat government's decision to grant them remission. Now, the court also sought the Gujarat government's response to the plea and in fact listed the matter to be heard after 2 weeks. Now, the 11 convicts were let out of Godhra jail on Independence Day after the Gujarat government approved their application for early release. Bilkis Banu was gang raped when she was pregnant during the 2002 Gujarat riots, and it was one of the most horrific cases. Her family members, along with her 3-year-old daughter, were also killed. In the meantime, TMC MP Maham Moitra has also filed a separate petition in the Supreme Court against the release of the convicts in the case. Meanwhile, in Telangana, suspended BJP MLA T. Raja was detained again for his alleged derogatory comments against Prophet Muhammad. Now, the police detained him under Preventive Detention Act. A press release by the police claimed that Singh had been, and I quote, habitually delivering provocative and inflammatory speeches and driving a wedge between communities leading to public disorder, end quote. Now, the police also accused him of being involved in 18 communal offences registered across different police stations in Hyderabad. Now, T. Raja was arrested earlier but was granted bail soon after he was arrested. He had uploaded a video on YouTube which has now been taken down, wherein he reiterated Nupur Sharma's remarks. Now, post that video, there were several protests that were reported against T. Raja for his comments and his subsequent release after his arrest as well. Now, the protests continued across Hyderabad for over 3 days. The police detained over 120 protesters from various localities, and the News Minute reported that they were suspected to be involved in protests that took place on the 24th of August night. Now, the police waited charged to disperse the protesters and later detained them. Some of the protesters were also picked up forcefully from their homes later, according to reports. Also in the news, the Delhi High Court has directed the centre to file a reply to petitions challenging its Agnipath scheme and to seek enrollment as per earlier recruitment processes into the armed forces. Now, the court, however, said that it will not stay or pass any interim order in this particular case. And on the scheme, in July, in fact, the Supreme Court had transferred 3 petitions challenging the Agnipat scheme to the Delhi High Court while requesting it to expedite the matter. There were nationwide protests, if you remember, against this particular scheme about several of its provisions. Following this, the centre had extended the upper age limit to 23 years for recruitment under this particular scheme. The scheme essentially aims to recruit citizens in the armed forces between the ages of 17 and a half and 21 for only 4 years, with the provision of to retain 25% of them for 15 more years. The matter will now be heard on the 19th of October. Also in the news, Pakistan has rejected India's action on the accidental firing of a BrahMos missile that landed in Pakistan in March. Now, the Foreign Ministry of Pakistan has reiterated its demand for a joint investigation in this particular matter. Earlier this week, India's Defence Ministry had terminated services of 3 Indian Air Force officials, holding them guilty of deviating from the standard operating procedure. Now, the incident was reported on the 9th of March, wherein a high-speed Indian projectile had entered its airspace and crashed near Mianchanu city in Kanewal district, damaging some civilian property as well. However, in a late-night statement on Wednesday, Pakistan's Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "As expected, the measures taken by India in the aftermath of the incident and the subsequent findings and punishments handed by the so-called Internal Court of Inquiry are totally unsatisfactory, deficient and inadequate." End quote. On to business news right now, an update on what's going on with the NDTV matter. As far as Adani Group is concerned, NDTV has said that the Adani Group will first need clearance from market regulator SEBI to acquire an indirect stake of 29.18% in the media company, as its founders Pranoy Roy and Radhika Roy are barred from buying or selling shares. In fact, this comes after Adani Enterprises had announced this week that it will indirectly acquire 29.18% stake in the media group and then subsequently launch an open offer of 26% stake. Now, NDTV had earlier said that the Adani Group's takeover bid was made without its consent. Moving on to news coming in from across the globe right now. As far as the Ukraine war is concerned, we told you yesterday that it's been 6 months since Ukraine war began, but for the first time, India has voted against Russia during a procedural vote at the United Nations Security Council on Ukraine conflict. So far, if you remember, India had abstained at the UN Security Council on Ukraine, but had repeatedly called for dialogue and an end to violence. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, on Wednesday reiterated that dialogue to promote dialogue and also diplomacy to end the conflict that's going on right now. Now, the 15-member UN body invited Ukrainian President Zelensky to address a meeting through a video teleconference. Also, according to Ukraine, a Russian rocket strike on a railway station killed at least 25 people, injured a dozen others. This came on a day when Ukraine marked 6 months since the Russian invasion and also celebrated, incidentally, its Independence Day, which was quite somber, according to at least the pictures that were released on the Defense Ministry. Russia has said that it hit a military train, killing hundreds of Ukrainian troops in the meantime. Also in the news, India has urged Canadian authorities to expedite the processing of visa applications of Indian students. Now, the Indian High Commission has said, and I quote, highlighting the fact that Indian students have already deposited tuition fees with the Canadian institutions, we requested authorities to expedite processing of visa applications, end quote. Now, according to several reports, Canada has increased the visa application processing time from an average of 4 weeks to 12 weeks, which is causing a lot of inconvenience to students. One piece of good news before we wrap things up on the bulletin: HS Pranoy has defeated Lakshya Sen to reach the quarterfinals at the BWF Championships 2022. Also, Satvik Chirag, Arjun Dhruv duos have reached the quarters as well. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.